Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from Amsterdam and across the world online. You're now watching The Moore Show and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm about to be joined with my guest, Thomas Campbell. Now, Thomas began researching altered states of consciousness with Bob Monroe at the Monroe Laboratories in the early 1970s, where he and a few others were instrumental in getting Monroe's laboratory for the study of consciousness up and running. Now, these early drug-free consciousness pioneers helped design experiments and develop the technology for creating specific altered states. Now, Campbell has been experimenting with and exploring the subjective and objective mind ever since. Thomas Campbell, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Evan. It's good to be here again. We did this once before many moons ago.
Yes, we did, and it's a pleasure to have you back on. It really is. What I'll do as well is I'll link the previous interview on the description for your last interview, which we did have a slight problem with. So I'm grateful to have you back on. And I was saying off air as well, I believe that everything happens for a reason. There was supposed to be yourself and Guy Needler. We'll get Guy and yourself on at some time in the near future, most definitely, because that will be a very cutting edge interview with you both on. Okay, now, with yourself, what was the thrust for you? Why were you so interested in delving into consciousness with Dr. Monroe, or with Bob Monroe back in the day? What were you trying to discover?
Well, I was very open to, I was a young guy at that point, not quite a young guy right now, but I was in my middle to late 20s. And very open-minded, wanted to, learn everything that there was to learn, like most young people. And I had some very interesting experiences with meditation. I took a TM meditation class, only cost $25 in those days for students. And I learned to meditate. I found out that I could debug my computer code very, very efficiently. In other words, I could just bring it up in my mind, scroll through the computer code that I was writing. I was in graduate school at the time, so I had lots of computer code. And I could see the errors. I could see why it wasn't compiling, that I'd left an exclamation mark off the end of a line of code or some other minor thing like that, which is typically what it was. I could find those. And that was a big deal for me because I had, in those days, was punch cards. I had like 4,000 punch cards, and to find one exclamation mark missing out of 4,000 punch cards was a lot of trouble. And it took hours and hours and hours to do by actually looking through the punch cards and looking through the printouts. But I could find those errors, all the errors in the punch cards, in minutes with a meditation state. And that just amazed me. That surprised me. I didn't expect that at all. But I did it often, so I know that it was real because those really were the errors, and it did make the code run a lot faster. So when I got a chance to work with Bob Monroe to study consciousness, I was very gung-ho. I was very excited about that because I knew this consciousness thing had a whole lot more to it than just being aware of this reality, that it had more depth and more capability than that, and a chance to study that and to learn more about it just was very exciting to me at the time.
Oh, right. Okay. No intentions, I guess, at that point ever to write a book, so many, all the material that you've done and the direction that you've gone in. I mean, you just flowed with it and just went with your interest.
Yes, that was right. And when I got there, the deal that myself and a friend of mine, Dennis Metternich, made with Bob was that we would be his scientists and do research and try to help him figure out a way to make this out-of-body experience that he experienced science rather than something else that nobody really believed actually happened. If he would teach us how to experience what he experienced, if he could teach us this out-of-body. Because my thought was that if you don't experience it yourself, then it's really not yours. It's somebody else's, and you can listen to somebody else talk about it, but you have to experience it in order to really study it. It has to be yours. So I was real happy to get tied up with Bob and to go out to his laboratory and study consciousness. We'd probably put in 20 hours a week on this night job as opposed to the day job where we worked to earn our money. And it was a really good time. And no, I had no idea at that point where it was going or what it would turn into. But I'm a physicist, so my thing in life is to understand why. Why does it work the way it works? What are its limitations? What can it do? Why does it do it that way? Is it consistent? All those things are the kind of things that a physicist asks. So I started working on those issues from the very beginning as I started to experience the larger consciousness system. And I continued working on those issues for probably another 35 years before I got to the point that I wrote the books. It was a long process because it is the theory is so unusual. It's so, what shall we say, far out, I guess, beyond what most people experience and think about as far as this reality that we live in. So it took a while to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine the journey that you've been on and all the information that you've amassed and the place that you're at now, the state that you're in now, the place that you find yourself now. How peaceful is that space you find yourself at?
Well, after a while, the things always change as you grow and as you learn. So when I started this, it was a long process of lying down, and Bob had these isolation chambers that were electromagnetically isolated and acoustically isolated, and we'd lie in there on a water bed so that it was as comfortable as possible. And the process was probably 20 minutes to a half an hour before I'd get to the point where I had let go of this reality frame and I was in the out-of-body reality frame. And then I realized that I didn't need all that process. But when I say then I realized, we're talking about 2 years, 2 or 3 years later, I realized I didn't need all that process. And then I found out that eventually I could just go there and be there in seconds and then tenths of seconds. And then I realized that I could go there and be in these altered states in other reality frames and still be here, interacting here at the same time. So eventually I end up at kind of where I am now, which is I exist in all of these frames kind of simultaneously. I can be aware of data that I'm collecting or that I'm interacting with that doesn't come from this physical reality, and I'm aware of what I'm doing and what I'm saying here. So I can just multi-process. And you might say I'm in a meditation state or I'm in an altered state all the time. That's my normal state. So it's not really altered, I guess, anymore, other than it has just grown. So eventually your reality grows, the number of choices that you have grows, the number of things that you can do at once grows, and then it just becomes it's just normal to live like that. It's not a thing that takes time to get there or come back. It's just part of the way your life is.
Yeah, but what I'm asking as well, really, is as you sit there now with me, how at peace are you with your life and just the general being that you are right now? I mean, if you were to say, are you happy? Are you content? Are you at peace with the way that your life turned out and is turning out? With everything that you've consumed and all the truth that you've come up with for yourself, has it and is it making your life in the moment now the best it could be?
Yes, all of those things. I am very happy with my life. I'm pleased with it. I'm satisfied. I enjoy it. Life in general for me is fun. Everything I do is fun. This interview for me is fun because we're
Good.
exploring now different in your mind, and we're going to interface with a whole lot of things that you can have viewers, and all of your viewers will get a chance to look at life a little differently. So it's all just fun, and I'm learning all the time, growing all the time, and life is just a blast. It's full of good times and joy. And yes, that's the practical side of this. There's the theoretical side, which is what is reality, how does it work, and why does it work that way? And then there's the practical side, which is well, so what? What does it mean? Okay, reality is virtual and all these strange things you say, but so what? What does that have to do with me? And that's a very good question, but it has everything to do with you. If you understand the nature of reality, then you understand why you're here, what the point is. And then you understand if you're not happy and you're not satisfied and you're not fulfilled and your life isn't mainly joy, you find out why. And you understand that the reason for dysfunction and for unhappiness and for stress and all of those things, anger and the rest of that negative stuff, is your fear. And you create a lot of that for yourself. You create most of it for yourself. And once you understand fear, you realize that fear is what creates ego and belief. And this fear and ego belief is what makes you miserable. And then you can learn, what can you do about that? How can you outgrow it? What's the way to go? So that's the practical part. It's not just about the physics of the natural world and how does reality work, a better quantum mechanics, a better relativity, that sort of thing. It's also about a better person. It's being in such a way that life is joyful, that you are efficient in your evolution.
Well, that's very true because, no matter what truth we're going to come up with and whatever, truth is always ongoing, isn't it? You're always discovering new truths and new understandings. But no matter about all that stuff that, as you've just mentioned, it matters not if you're not happy and fulfilled and everything else that comes with being in this reality. Now, does that mean this reality is always going to be all those things? Happy, fulfilled, loving, amazing, great. I mean, surely this reality is created in a sense so that we have the opposites as well, so that, that's how we really learn, those bloody hard, shitty opposites, because they don't seem to be present in the infinitive levels that are available to go to when you leave this dimension, but they are very present here.
Well, yes, I think my life will always be joy and joyful and very happy. And the reason for that is it doesn't mean that everything that is going to go on in my life is, exactly the way I would want it to be. What it means is that I really don't have any way that I particularly want it to be. I'm perfectly happy to let it be the way it is and to accept it as it is and to deal with it as it is. And when the hard things come up, well, I see those as challenges, opportunities, ways of growing. How am I going to deal with this? What's the right way to deal with this? And everything will leave you a little better off. So there's joy and satisfaction in that you see your life as a growth process, and you see the hard things that come at you as challenges,
No.
and it all becomes part of a big game. How do I meet this challenge, and how do I meet it in a way that's full of joy, that's full of peace, that's I meet it in a way that's caring for other people. So that's the way you live your life. So yes, hard things might happen, difficult things may come about, but they will be challenges, and I will deal with them, and I will have fun dealing with them, even if they're hard, even if sometimes they hurt. That's part of the way life is. But that hurt is a it's a good thing in as much as you learn from it, you grow, now you rise above that. That's not going to happen anymore, because now I understand how I brought that about, or how it occurred, and either I'll be ready for it next time, or there won't be a next time, because I won't create that again.
Okay, now everything you've said there, I think myself and lots of other people need to rewind that and just go over what you've just said there, because you may not think it's very powerful, but I'm telling you what you're saying there is very powerful. Lots of great stuff what you've just said there. Okay, so for example then, I manifested, I'll use those words, I very much believe in the law of attraction, okay? And so I manifested this ability to come to Amsterdam, all right? I've manifested to be able to make a living just from now off doing the talk show that I do. Not a massive living, but just for now, it's a living. I am in the process of manifesting a shitload of money, because that's what I want to do. Now, do I know that's going to happen? Are there situations in my life or other people's life right now where the things, most of the things that they want, they could have, but there's some of those things that just really do not happen, and it almost seems so unfair. You almost feel, it's like, okay, so some of these bigger things can happen, but then the things I really want, well, it's blockage after blockage, and it's like, okay, well, maybe they're not meant to happen, but I don't want to hear that. I want what I want, and I don't want the wanting of it. I want to have it now. I want to keep saying I have it, to bring it in as though you already have it, even if you don't, but it then brings in the experience of having it. But it still feels as though even if I'm going to go down that path, it's not good enough to bring it in. It's still never going to happen, or it takes so much time. It just seems so unfair.
Well, the way that usually works is, of course, the way all of this works is your intent modifies future probability. So when you have an intent to whatever, to, as you say, you want a lot of money, or you want a relationship, or you want whatever.
The normal thing.
You have those intentions, and those intentions will help change the probability of the future that those things will occur. So if you have a positive intent that these things will occur, they're more likely to occur. That doesn't mean that they have to occur. It just means that they're more likely. So there's a couple of things involved here with that. One is the clarity and focus of your intent will move the future probability more. If your intent is very fuzzy, if your intent is not very constant, you don't have it very often, and when you do have it, there's a lot of other things going on there with it, then it's not so powerful. So that's one thing. The second thing is that some things have their own natural probability that they're very difficult or whatever, and maybe you use an intent and you increase the probability from 1,000 to 1 all the way down to 101. Well, that's a couple of orders of magnitude. Huge change you've made there with your intent, but it's still 100 to 1, and it's not so likely to happen. So you don't always get, whatever you want. But what's probably going on with you, since that you express some frustration with things that you have been working on, and maybe for a long time, that are just not happening for you, those things are probably because you have the opposite intent going on at the same time. Now, the opposite intent are the things that we fear, the things that we're afraid we're not going to get. And because we have that fear, because we have that sense of of, I don't know, not being worthy or not being lucky or not having that, because it is so important as to have it. We focus on the fact that we don't have it. And that focus on the fact that we don't have it is actually modifying the probability to make it less likely that we'll ever get it. You see, you can change probability in either direction. So we tend to do those things that create our fears, that manifest our fears. So if we feel that we will never get a great relationship, and that's a fear of ours, and we want it so badly, we always thinking about not having it and how bad it is to not have it, we're actually putting energy into that state of not having it, because our thoughts are thinking in the negative rather than in the positive. That helps manifest the negative rather than the positive. And the other thing going on is that if you have this fear, this ego and beliefs, they inhibit you from having the positive thoughts to counter them. In other words, you think you're having a positive thought, but underneath that positive thought is another thought that maybe is not in your intellect, but it's there just the same, that says, I'm afraid that'll never happen. I don't think that will really happen. You know, that negative stuff is just hanging in there, kind of counteracting the positive energy that you're trying to put into it.
That's so true, and it's the frustration of like, oh God, you know, is it going to ever happen? And if it doesn't, well, what kind of fairness in me coming here and choosing to be here was that in the first place, of someone that chose to be here, chose to have certain, you know, situations going on. No recollection of it, completely, you know, veiled in a sense of ever remembering anything, except for maybe going into that quiet meditative space where you can connect to your higher self, and then you can connect to the greater reality and get your own answers rather than going to a medium or anyone else. I do believe all answers lie within. Yeah, probably we're just a bit too scared to go down there sometimes to hear what it's going to say. It's probably going to say exactly what's all the fears that you thought in the first place, and then you're just screaming at yourself there. It's like, that's just not fair. But yeah, I suppose. See, I like the space you come from. This acceptance of whatever is now, and it's just fantastic, and it's great, and it's a learning from. It doesn't mean that if someone's going to come and harm me, that I'm not going to protect myself. Or it doesn't mean that if something's not right or something's painful towards oneself, that we don't make changes. It's just that in the initialness of it happening, it's the space that you're coming from. It is a great space. It's the space that Eckhart Tolle probably comes from as well, I think, a bit, to name a few here, and some other great people have come from as well. When I say great people that come from this space, it just resonates something different, and you sure do. Yeah. Well, what do? You just accept it, don't you? You just...
Yeah, well, you know, I've heard you mention the word fair now, 4, 5, 6 times, and I should point out that there really is no such thing as fair. Fair is a perception of the ego. Fair is a perception of what you deserve, what you want, what you need, and if you don't get it, it's not fair. You see, there is no fair. Things just happen because they do. They happen because of your intent. They happen because of the intents of other people. They happen because of the way you are. They happen because you're not the only person making things happen in the world. There's, 7.5 billion other people who also have intents. And all of this mixes up together, and it's not whether it's fair or not. It just is. And you have to deal with it. And the question is, how do I deal with it gracefully? How do I deal with it with caring? How do I deal with it by considering others as opposed to how do I get what I want? How do I make it the way I want it to be? You see, all of that I stuff is just ego.
Exactly.
It's all about you. It's what you want, what you need, and how am I going to get that? Well, that's all ego stuff. And all that ego stuff then comes out of this kind of negative side, and it helps create the frustration and maintain the frustration, and it prevents those things we want from actually manifesting.
Absolutely it does. Yes. And whatever issues that we're going through, or issues that we are here to deal with, life sure does have ways to bring us into dealing with them if we keep missing the mark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see, we're here for a reason. We're here to grow up. We're here to, in technical terms, lower the entropy of our consciousness. We're here to become love. And when we do things that are counter to that, well, we're not paying attention. We're not learning our lessons. And when you don't learn your lessons, well, you just get another one. It's not this thing that, well, I've been in 6th grade for 5 years, it's only fair to pass me. It's not like that. Until you get it, you just keep doing it again and again. Now, it comes in different forms, it comes in different patterns, but typically it's that same old thing that you've been struggling with for a long time. And until you get that, until you let it go, and you find a lot of times if there's these things that you really, really need and you want, well, that's your ego. It's I need, I want, it's about me. Once you get to the point that you're so frustrated with it that you throw up your arms and say, I just don't care anymore. It's just, I accept it. It's just not going to happen. It is what it is. I'm going on with my life, and I'm just not going to think about that anymore. That's when things start to happen for you because, see, you've let go of the ego. You're just now in accepting mode of what happens. So it's often not until you hit that bottom of the barrel that you throw up your hands and give up that things actually begin to work for you. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to get to the bottom of the barrel first with your frustration before you let that frustration go and just accept. You can get there straight off and just let that ego go, let that fear go, and suddenly your life starts falling into place. And it's so interesting because if there's something that you need to know, if something that is kind of on your path to further growth, it seems to just fall in front of your feet just as you need it. And the world just works that way. So it becomes, that's why it's so much fun. You're now kind of in a partnership with life. You're in a partnership with this existence, and you're working together. And if you need this kind of experience or this kind of information, then there it is. All you do is get to that point where, this is something I need to know or someplace I need to go, and it just falls in front of you. And you say, well, that's nice. And then you go do that and whatever else you need with the other kinds of sometimes challenges that you need or sometimes breathing spells that you need. They all just fall into place. And you don't have to pursue any of them. And that was one of the big lessons I learned as I was going through this out at Bob Monroe's, is that I, being a left brain, person, I like to think everything with my intellect. And that makes me want to control things. I use my intellect to, what should I do to end up where I want to be? What's my strategy? How do I manipulate events so that, I come out where I'd like to come out and so on? That's just the way left brain people are. They're always trying to lay plans and schemes and ideas and work the probabilities and the numbers to make things happen the way they'd like to have them happen. And I realized that is just like trying to stuff too many clothes in a suitcase. As soon as you get that last sleeve in, something popped out somewhere else, and you get that in and then something else pops out. There's no end to it. There's always a frustration. There's always something there's always a thorn on your seat. There's always something that's a problem. And then you say, if I solve that, life would be great. If I just solved that. Well, as soon as you solve that, it's something else poking you. It's something else that doesn't work right. And it's this never-ending sequence of things that don't ever quite, work out, no matter how much I try to control the future and what happens. They just don't work out. And I realized that when I gave up all of that, I gave up control. All right, I'll just deal with whatever happens as it happens. I'll learn from it. I'll grow from it. I'll try to find my lesson in it, and I'll just accept it. Once I stopped trying to control, I didn't have any need for control because everything that I wanted just fell in front of my feet whenever I needed it. So it's the idea of giving up that control is you get to the point you don't need it. Yeah. There is no point in it because everything that happens is okay however it is. You see, again, it's this attitude of whatever happens is something I'm going to be able to learn from. It's going to be something good. I'll find good in it. It'll be, I'll work with it. And that way, nothing is disappointing. Nothing is ever futile or a waste of your time or anything else.
No.
Everything is always productive and part of your path forward.
Now, everything you're saying, you have to understand, I completely agree with, and it's so refreshing. I'm so glad you came on. I can only say these words. It is true what I'm saying. Now, in that acceptance mode, sometimes though there's addictions that are in the background playing away, and you don't realize they're playing away, and those addictions, I have to say, can come from past lives. It's like, for me, I have past life readings before, and they all seem to say the same thing, that I was in the monasteries for many years. I was a monk for many years, and I was forced to break out of being going back into that same lifetime again. So this was apparently one of my first lifetimes, apparently, of knowing relationships and having interactions with women. And God knows what I used to get up to in the monasteries, right? But because of that, I know that there's a lot of addiction to sex sometimes. Not to sex, but to that not having a relationship where there's sex in the background. Yeah. So for me, that tape's playing. And it's not just about, so when you say, okay, yeah, hands up, just you just flow and go with it, I completely agree. But then I think for people, and I'm just using me as an example here, we've all got other addictions. There are past life issues that have come into this life still that have not been healed, or you're fresh out of something. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, you're giving a reason for the problem, but the solution to the problem doesn't make any difference what the reason is.
But I know,
the solution.
But it's still difficult though, because you're like, well, why do I feel like this, and why is it so frustrating that I'm not with anyone because of that side of it? And it's like, okay, so if I'm giving a reason for it, but it's still there, no matter how much you accept the solution and go with it, that those issues are still,
Right. And the point is, see, you have to deal with that. You've got these feelings, you've got this, this desire, this need, and you just have to deal with that. Well, if you don't have anything that's on the horizon to satisfy that need, then you have to deal with that. Say, okay, I can accept that. I'll live my life how it comes. I'll accept how that is, and that'll be okay. And once you get to that point, then you'll find things in your love life will start to happen by themselves, because it won't be coming from the me, I, ego, fear that you can't have it. See, it's still a fear. The fear is that I won't get that. I want that and I won't get it. And that's the fear. It's not happening. It's something I need. Well, all that I stuff is ego. Ego comes out of fear. And when that fear and ego that you have is actually suppressing the probability that you're going to get what you want. So you just need to say, well, I'll accept it. All right, I'm a monk. I'm still a monk. I'm sitting here. I don't have monk's clothes on anymore, but that's the cards that, fate's dealing to me. How am I going to deal with these gracefully? How can I learn from what I have? Maybe I'll learn other things this time. Maybe, it'll be different later. But if it is, it is. And if it isn't, it isn't. I'm going to take what I got, and I'm going to learn from it. Be graceful with it. Accept it. It's okay. If you do that, then that takes all the negative stuff that you have that's decreasing the probability of what it is you want.
Yeah, and I only share this because it's not, some people would not want to share this, but I'm sharing it because there's no point me doing this talk show if I can't be open and honest about things, because then it doesn't help anybody else. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. There's nothing like being authentic.
Oh, there's not. I'll probably wake up tonight and think, oh shit, what did I say that for? Do you know what I mean? No, I didn't do that, did I, with Tom Campbell? But it's okay, because well, hey ho, it's all part. We look. I look at this reality different, and I think with the move that I've made, I've looked at it even more differently recently. Just how fake that it all is, in a sense, and that I don't want to carry on like this, and I want, and if other people can get something from this as well to heal other things, that's great as well. It probably doesn't help me coming over to Holland and setting up an adult sex toy website. right. But I'm sure there's some karma in that somewhere along the line. But I tell you why I've done that as well, is that goes back to purpose. I'm mentioning these things because I'm being very honest here right now about what's going on. And the honesty is there to show people transparency as well. And in the sense of, why do we do what we do? What is my purpose? And can it be connected with issues that I have sometimes? Maybe. Or do we do purpose from the sense of, which I'd like to come from this sense of doing something that you enjoy, and no matter what it is you do, as long as it's being of service to people, that's an important part. If you're doing it for yourself, that's the wrong thing. You've got to do something that's, I've always felt this, even though some people have gone against me with this thinking, that you've got to do something that's going to benefit others, and it's going to be a help to others that isn't hurting yourself or anybody else.
That's right, and that's a very good point, and that's very valid reasoning. And the reason that that's important is that when it's about others and not about yourself, well, then it's not about that fear and ego. You see, it's about somebody other than you, and the more energy you put into that, the less energy you put into being self-focused, and then the more peace, the more happiness, the more things work out for you. So it's just that thinking about others, that you need to be productive in the society, you need to be helpful to other people, or at the very least, you need not to be hurtful to other people. And if you have that in mind, that's that other-centeredness, well, that's good. That's the direction that we're trying to move to. That's what love is all about. It's about others. If it's about you, it's not love. If it's about others, it can be love, you see. So that's where we're headed. And as you play the game the way the game needs to be played, you're more likely to win. You see, as you play the game in a way that's opposite to the way the game needs to be played, then you just struggle and struggle and struggle.
Well, here's another thing as well. As I've mentioned what I've said to you, right, and it doesn't shock you, which is great. Thank God for that. There's some people in this field who do these type of shows. And I've been one of them as well, and I'll just talk about myself here in a sense for this, that, you can only do things that fit in with a spiritual ethos. You can only do things which are, whatever you're going to else, when you do these kind of shows, you'll seem to be a light to others, and you'll seem to be some sort of, high and mighty kind of, oh, look how great they are. Do you know what I mean, in a sense? And it's not always like that. We all have our own stuff that we're dealing with, and we all have different things on the side that we're doing. So what I'm trying to say, and what I think I'm trying to say, is that there's no wrong or right. Whatever you're doing, there's no wrong or right, except for that space of, is it of service? And is it hurting yourself or anyone else? And if you've answered no to any of them, then what's the issue? But then some people wouldn't see it like that. Even though they may say they're spiritual, when the curtains are closed, it's different thinking.
Yes, absolutely. There's a huge difference between being and acting. We can act the way we think we should be, particularly if people are watching, particularly if you're on the air, particularly if there's an audience out there, then you can act the way you think you should act, but that's not at all authentic, and that does not move you forward, and it doesn't help your evolution at all. Matter of fact, it tends to stick you, where you are. So the point of being authentic, the point of being honest and being open, is really the first step in any kind of growth. You got to realize, exactly who and what you are and what you're about, and accept that. Say, that's me. Okay. Now, if there's some parts about that you don't like or that are frustrated, then you say, well, I need to deal with that. How's the best way to deal with that? And yes, your life should begin to take on a sense of, it's about others. It's about being helpful and useful to other people. You have this talk show, and you're offering information to people that you think these people may find useful, may find helpful. It'll help their understanding. It'll help them grow up. It'll help them see patterns. And like you say, it's not like you're alone here with your frustrations and with your unmet needs. The whole world, almost 7.5 billion of the humans wandering around on this planet, are very much in the same boat that you're in.
Yeah.
They have struggles, they have issues, they have things they want to accomplish, they don't know how to accomplish them, they're trying and it doesn't work out. And that's just the way life is. It's a challenge, but the way you meet that challenge, as you said, is to think about others.
Yes, and let's just get into
about other people. And so the point here is that growing up is what we're here to do, and that growing up means letting go of fear, letting go of the ego and beliefs, becoming authentic, being who you are, accepting that, and then moving forward from that point without the fear, without the ego, seeing how helpful you can be to others. And if you do that, things will start to fall together. When you have, you are maybe relationship challenged right now, that's your challenge you're trying to meet. But when you kind of let that go, as far as the I of it, I need, let that go, and turn it into the, well, if I meet somebody, I'll just meet them. And if something works out between us, that'll be good. And if it doesn't, well, that's okay too. Maybe I'll have a friend afterwards. And I just take it with that attitude rather than what I want and the way I want this relationship to be. You've just raised the probability of what you want tremendously.
Absolutely.
Because that sense of your fear that gets at I want, well, that turns out to be kind of a turnoff, you see. And that's what's getting in your way. When you can just be authentic, to be who you are, and also at the same time be open and giving and accepting, then things will work fine for you.
Absolutely, completely agreed. And I do see so many relationships where they're just together because they don't want to be on their own, or they feel that there's the stress as well, not known to them, but maybe known to them a little bit, of the the society, the needs of society, where it says it looks down on maybe people being single sometimes. Maybe I'm just saying, right? And also the need for companionship, for sex, for everything else, and it's they just get themselves with the wrong people, but it's the perfect person because the opposing person they're with comes with loads of issues as well that they're trying to sort out. So it's difficult to say that it's wrong when people get together like that, because probably they actually needed to get together like that, but it's not something that I want to attract in my life.
Exactly. Most people do not fall in love. Most people fall in need. They find somebody else who has needs that are compatible with their needs, and then the two people get together and say that they're in love when they're really in need. They're meeting each other's needs. And the problem with that is it works for a while. It makes everybody feel better for a while. But those needs change. Now you're not really in the relationship because of the idea of giving. What can I give to this other person? What can I do for them? You're in it because what can they do for me? What is it, that they can give me that I need? And it's the wrong thing. Now it's an ego leading rather than love leading. And those relationships do fine for a while, but eventually they kind of crumble and die because what's in them is not real. It's not really satisfying.
No.
It's both people trying to be something they're not.
Yeah.
And they know they have to satisfy this other person's needs. And needs change. Needs are not something that just stays the same. The needs will change. And there's no end to it as well, because as soon as this need gets met, another need sprouts up. And the reason that is because they're really based on the fear, and getting that need met doesn't erase the fear. So that's why another need will pop up right after one of them gets satisfied. So you're in this, you're like a hamster on the wheel. You're trying and trying and trying and trying to get to get someplace, but you never seem to.
Absolutely.
And you have to get rid of the fear first. You have to be open, and it has to be about the other person. It's what can I give, not what do I need to get.
Now,
if you have that, it'll work.
Now, some people say, with what you're saying, let's get back into that giving, because this is an important thing for people, right? This is a big issue for people as well, and this is part of the core message of your work, in a sense, what it seems to be right now. That some people say, well, yeah, but if you're giving, then you may be beginning, all you're going to do is attract and become a caretaker. If you're giving and only thinking of other people, where's the self-love in that? Where's the self-love in loving yourself, in just putting everyone else first? When are you going to put yourself first? When is that going to take place?
Well, let me point out that all of those attitudes of what about me? That's all fear. It's the fear that you're not going to get what you want. It's the fear that the other person will abuse you. It's the fear that you'll just be the caretaker. All of that is fear. So yes, if you come to the relationship full of fear about not getting your needs met, well, then if you give, that give is an act. It's not real. You're giving because you think you should, because you heard somebody talk about it in a lecture and convinced you that would be a good thing to help you get what you want. So now giving is just a strategy to get what you want. That's not the thing. You have to give at the being level. You have to give just because you want to, not because of what you think you get back. It's not about you.
Okay.
And self-love is a thing to avoid. You don't want to love yourself. Now, you don't want to feel any negativity about yourself. That is true. If you feel negative, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good looking, I'm not this, I don't have the social skills, I'm not, I don't have much to offer. All that negative stuff is bad news. That just drags you down. You can't get past that point, because now you have a belief of what you're not. And that belief will keep you stuck in that sense of being unworthy, and you'll have that fear. The fear and the belief go together. So yes, you do need to not be negative about yourself, but that is not self-love. Loving yourself is like, oh, I'm so wonderful, I'm great. Well, what do we call that? We call that narcissism. So self-love is narcissistic.
But can you love another person if you can't love yourself?
Yes, indeed. Loving yourself is dysfunctional. Now, what people mean when they say you have to love yourself before you can love others, what they mean by that isn't that you have to love yourself, but that you have to stop being negative about yourself. That's different. Stop being negative. Stop having all this fear about how dysfunctional you are. See, that's just more fear. Oh, I'm not wealthy enough, or good looking enough, or attractive enough. That's all fear and belief, and that's bad for you. That inhibits you. That keeps you from getting anywhere. But that's not, it's not self-love. Self-love would be covering that up. I'm wonderful. I'm just terrific, and I don't know why everybody doesn't, want me as a boyfriend, that sort of thing. All that is narcissism. That's acting. It's not authentic. It's what you want to hear. And self-love is always dysfunctional. Self-loathing is always dysfunctional. You see? Those are dysfunctional.
That's so interesting what you're saying. I would not have expected you to say that, because I know other people listening to this right now be like, no, you have to love yourself.
Yes.
Self-love is the most important thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah, and what you really mean by that, or what they should mean by that, is that you have to get rid of the negative things about yourself.
Well,
if you feel negative about yourself, that's what that means. So when people have this old saw that you hear, you have to love yourself or you love anybody else. Not so. The words, I know the meaning, and the meaning is correct. The meaning is you can't have all this negative attitudes towards yourself, because if you don't feel worthy to give anything, then it's very hard to give anything.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
So that's true, but self-love is different. See, love is about other. What is this self-love? Love is about other people. So what is self-love? Self-love, it's about me. Well, if it's about you, that's ego. That's not love. So you have to be authentic. You have to accept yourself as you are, and if you find things about yourself that you don't like, then you have to change them, not cover them up, not pretend they're not there, but you have to change them if you don't like them. And I mean change it, not in action, but in being.
Okay.
And then you're okay.
Well, no, I completely agree with you in one sense because, I've met some beautiful women and they've, you just wouldn't believe what they say, how they don't like themselves and everything else. And it's just crazy tapes playing on them sometimes. And it was just, it's shocking, but as well, how would I define love right now? That's a difficult one, and you've kind of defined love there, which is your truth, and that's fine. Other people have got different truths on love, and we've all got a different take on love, haven't we?
We've all got a different take on everything.
Yeah,
that's the way it is. Some of those takes are ego, some are beliefs. Some are fear-driven, and some are just habit, and some come out of our culture. They come from everywhere, and yes, we all interpret the data differently.
And even, those that channel or those that are with mediumistic gifts connecting with those that have passed, or however they do it, even those that they connect with have got their own truths that they bring through as well. When you cross over, I don't think there's no defining truth that's slammed down on the table to say this is the truth, you got it all wrong, you silly people. I think you're allowed to develop that truth, and there's probably infinitive levels, like I've said before in the interview, to go to where there's different truths, and they're all learning the truth of whatever theirs is, and that truth will change love, I suppose, or the perspective of it. But what is love on this level? Well, it's kindness to yourself and others. It's being of service. I've got to say that because that's what this interview's been about, and I do believe that. It's many things that brings joy as well, and non-harm to others and yourself. It's very it's difficult to define it really. Like I say, it changes. But this of being, Edgar Cayce always talked about being of service. In his readings that he did, and so does a lot of the other channelers as well. The great channelers that are out there now, they talk about being of service. I've always felt that. Whenever I'm out there being of service, I've always felt so empowered doing that. It felt bloody good. But then you'd get people coming along to say, what about you? What about you in this process? Well, you can't just keep giving to the poor, or you can't just keep, whatever it may be, just handing out whatever it is. Look, there are better ways to help people in need, which is to basically provide them with the facilities to help themselves. That's what you could do, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. You see, that's. Well, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Listen, I'd rather you interrupt me. It's cool. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, when you say that you want to help people, that doesn't mean that you go to your bank, draw out all your money, and pass it out. That would not be a very effective way to help people. You see, so when you say you give and you give to people, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to give them cash or give them your car or let them live in your house. See, the giving has to, like you say, it has to be something that helps them grow, helps them be able to take care of themselves. What's the old saw? Don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish, right?
Exactly.
It's so we have to talk about what it means, you see, to give. Now, I talk about that fear is the problem, and people will say, oh no, fear is necessary. What if I meet a bear in the woods? It'd be stupid if I wasn't afraid and ran away. If I just walked up and said, hello, bear, that would be a silly thing to do. Well, being fearless doesn't mean being stupid. You see, if there are bears in the woods and you're fearless and not stupid, then perhaps you don't go out in the woods this month because that's their mating season and they're very territorial, and that wouldn't be a good time to run into a big grizzly bear and be in his territory when you shouldn't be. So you would stay out of the woods. That doesn't mean you're fearful. It just means you're not stupid. You see, there's a difference. Fear is always dysfunctional. Fear is always dysfunctional. If you're fearful and you see that bear, you'll probably run, and then he'll probably chase you because animals that are predators chase things that run. If you're fearless, then you'll say, oops, and you'll keep that eye contact, and you'll back out very slowly and not make any quick moves. And because you're fearless, you can think, you don't panic, and you can work with a dangerous issue. If you are fearful, you're useless in a dangerous issue because you panic and you do things that are, add to the problem rather than to the solution. So fear is never a useful thing. And it works out the same way with this self-love. Self-love is never a useful thing. But I don't mean by that you're down on yourself. That's not self-love. That's self-hate. That's self-loathing. That's another problem that is of absolutely no value. Love is about other people. Love is something you give. You give away. You give to others. You see, and if you love on condition, if you say, well, I'll love you if you love me, I'll love you, or I'll have, I'll pay your bills if you give me sex, or whatever the deal is. If it's, what you're going to do for them if they do that for you, that's a deal. That's a business arrangement. That's not love. Love is just given. It's free.
That's not love. No, I would agree. I was hoping you was going to say that. I was like, is he going to say? Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, because then I go back to what I was going to say then as well, which is, whatever you do, as long as it's not hurting anyone else or yourself. Yeah. Which is the same thing as what you're saying. That it's so true what you say. It really is. Oh God, you really have had a great lifetime to really go through all this and really come up with some good truths. I do like what you have to say. It does resonate a lot, and it will resonate with a lot of people out there as well.
Yeah. Well, it all comes out of the basic theory. Once you understand the nature of reality, not only does it allow you to do better physics and to understand the way the world works, but it allows you to see what's important and what's not, what's significant, where, what direction is forward, like which way's up. And most people don't know which way's up. They're just kind of slogging through life, reacting to things, mostly with their ego and fear and beliefs. And it's like wandering around cluelessly on the playing field because you don't know what the game is all about. That's not very productive. Once you do kind of understand what the game's about, then all the rest of this stuff just falls in place. It's just the way it is. It doesn't take a lot of, it doesn't even take a lot of experience to understand it. It just all makes sense.
It does, yeah. Do you think we're very lucky in being a sort of first world countries that that we're able to look at the reality in this perspective? Because in third world countries, in countries where it's money's a bit tighter, they don't have the luxury, do they? Their consciousness doesn't have the luxury to remember some of the truths that we're having now.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think the amount of money is not all that big an issue about the choices you make. You see, what we're here to do is we get choices. Every day we get choices. And those are choices not only in what we do, but choices of how we are, how we respond. How do we feel? Do we respond to this event with anger or not? You see, these are our choices. And no matter where you are, poor or rich, destitute, starving or not, you still have choices. And those choices will help you evolve. If the choices are made based upon caring, based upon other, based upon what you can give, maybe you can't give much of anything because you're starving and poor and don't have a house and you sleep on the ground and you haven't eaten for a week, but you might be able to give some comfort. You might be able to help, somebody else, pick up a stick or do whatever. You do what you can do. You still care for people, you see. And if you have that caring, even if there's very little you can do with it, if you have that caring, then you're growing, you're evolving, you're learning lessons and making progress. And if you have all the money and time in the world and you don't have that caring, it's all about you, then you're not making any progress. You're static and you're sitting still. Now, yes, there's a point where if every minute of every day is involved in staying alive, then you don't have a whole lot of time to lay back and think about things and think big thoughts. But even so, even if every minute of every day is about staying alive, there's still a lot of decisions to make. There's still a lot of choices that you have. And if you make those choices for the right reasons, then you're learning and you're growing, no matter what your situation is. So you see, let's say you and the person next to you are both starving and neither one of you eaten for a long time. And, then you find a piece of food. Well, do you run over and grab it out of their hands if they picked it up first so that you get it so you'll survive and they don't? Do you allow them just to eat it and not give you any because they're the ones that found it? If you find it, do you share? You see, you have lots of decisions to make. And if you end up, let's say, bashing other people in the head with big rocks so that they won't eat any food that you might find, you see, then those are the wrong decisions. It's not about how comfortable you are. It's not about how well you're doing. It's about the choices you make. And you have choices everywhere in all situations.
Yeah, it's so true. And I just say this, I always felt that no matter what wealth I would accumulate in the not too distant future, there was some bigger purpose for it. It was never to accumulate it, just have it sat there. It was to do something with it. And I don't know, and I feel that there's something I'm going to do with it. There's choices that would give me to do something bigger, more of a giving thing. I don't know quite what it would be. So when if I've mentioned wealth in this show, I just that I do come from that perspective. It's not that I don't come from that. Of course I do. Only because, as well as I know in this reality, if you don't take it with you. You don't even take your underwear with you when you go. So very interesting what you've got to say. Yeah. So then very, very briefly as well, because I know we're a bit over time here, so I just appreciate you giving us this time. This is so interesting what you've got to say.
No problem. I'll answer questions and talk as long as you've got time.
Yeah, well, we haven't got too long, but this is just I could get you back on again, most definitely. There's so much to be talked about. Purpose then. Okay, so I've mentioned some of the things that I'm doing in the not too distant future with why I've made this move, and we've all got a purpose. We've all feel that we're here to do something. How do we define our purpose in your experience, and how does that fit in with being of service?
Well, once you understand the nature of our reality, who we are, why we're here in this reality, what we're supposed to be doing here, you come to the conclusion. I have come to the conclusion, and it's basically a logical derivation. And fortunately, the logical derivation that explains our purpose also then explains, double slit experiment and better physics at the same time. So the logic would seem to be reasonably good, or it wouldn't be able to do that. In any case, the logic of this understanding says that we are here to evolve the quality of our consciousness. That is, to make choices that are positive, choices that are other-based, that are love-based, that are caring, that are kind, that are helpful. And we are here to get rid of our fear, because fear is the opposite of love. It's not love and hate and fear and no fear. It's love and fear are the two opposites. So we're here to get rid of that fear, get rid of that ego and those beliefs, and just exist at the being level, care about others. That's our purpose, and those are the choices I'm talking about. If you make choices toward becoming love, then you're evolving the quality of your consciousness. You're growing, and that's when you are happy, satisfied. Whatever you need falls at your feet. It just works out good. Life is great. Even the challenges, even the things that hurt are seen in a positive light because you grow from them, and you feel better afterwards. You are better afterwards. You see, now that's our purpose. So what does that have to do with love? Well, it has everything to do with love, and it has everything to do with the way we approach everything in this life. It's not what you do that matters so much as the intent you have to do it. It's the reason you do it, the why you do it. So you can have two people doing the exact same action, but one of them is coming at it from from ego and fear, and the other one from love, you see. And the action itself doesn't matter. What matters is, how do you approach it? Why do you approach it that way? What's your intent? So, for example, there's a person walking down the street in front of you, and as they walk, a $20 bill falls out of their pocket. Now, we're going to have two scenarios. One person, who's the person walking behind, he says, "Wow, look at that!" And he picks up the $20 bill and he looks around to see if anybody's watching him, and he stuffs, and he's going to stuff it in his pocket, but he sees there's several people standing just off to the side that are watching him. So he walks up and touches the guy on the shoulder and says, "Here, you dropped this," and gives him his $20 bill back. And there's the other person who sees the $20 bill, picks it up, and immediately runs up and taps the guy on the shoulder and says, "Hey, it just fell out of your pocket." You see, one of them was fear. He didn't want to be caught stealing the money. He didn't want to be seen, ripping somebody off. The other one had no question of that, no thought of that. It wasn't anything about whether or not, he should put the money in his pocket or not. It was just immediately, well, of course, he would, alert the other person and give the money back. So we have the same act. If you were just off to the side watching these people, you'd see both persons did exactly the same thing. They picked up the $20 bill and then they gave it back. But one of them was making a choice toward love. The other was making a choice with intent to fear.
Yes. Yes.
So you see, so it's not the action, that it's not what you do, it's why you do it. That's what's important. That's where morality is based. Morality is not in the action. It's not that some actions are moral and some actions are not moral. It's that some intents are moral and some intents are not moral.
And okay, what about the basic thing of enjoying what you're doing? So I don't know if you would enjoy taking the money of someone else and robbing them. I don't think I would enjoy doing that, right?
No, most people would feel bad about that. There's an intrinsic thing that we're kind of already wound up and pointed in the right direction. So most people would feel bad about that. And those who would feel good about that, they are few and far between, thankfully. But there are some that do. There are some that feel better ripping somebody off than actually earning their money. They feel superior. I hoodwinked him. I got him. That's
yes, of course.
They're like that. But they are not the majority.
Well,
those are not happy people. Those are miserable people for the most part.
That's right. So in defining purpose, then let's just keep this a little bit brief in a sense that could we say that, okay, what would you love to do, and go with that? Is that an easy first step?
Do what you love. That's probably it's a good idea, but it's not going to be a good idea for everybody, because some people, what they love is taking advantage of other people. But for most people, doing what you care about, what makes you feel good,
as long as it's not hurting anybody else. Should we put that in there?
Yeah, if you put that in there, that's not hurting anybody else, then and even what you usually say, that's not hurting yourself too. You know, you don't want to hurt anyone.
No, put yourself in there.
And as long as you're not hurting anyone, and you then have the ability to grow from whatever it is you do. You see, so doing things that please you is good, because that's kind of your natural proclivity. That's what you want to do. That's what you're going to be good at. That's what's going to make you happy. So yes, pursue those things. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then if we put in there, can it be of service as well? And the thing is, can it be of service to people? You'll find that most times it naturally is.
Well, yes, and the reason it just seems to all be that way, that it naturally is because that's why you want to do it in the first place, you see.
Oh, okay, good point.
Because that's the way you are. You are a person that wants to do something useful. You don't want to just take, you want to give back. You want to do things that are useful for people, and because you have that inner drive to be that way, which is the kind of inner drive you have in this reality frame, then it turns out that when you do what you love, when you do the things that you want to do, they do serve other people, because that's why they were a good thing that you wanted to do, because that's the way you're made. That's your purpose here.
Yeah. And look, I know this is going a bit off key here as well when I mention this. It's just something that keeps coming in my mind. What about those with addictions to certain substances? Yeah, be it addictions to alcohol, addictions to smoking, addictions to drugs, whatever the addiction may be. How could your work approach to a sort of, look at that from a different perspective and try to cure that for someone as well?
Well, there's two kinds of addictions, and one of them is physiological, where your body craves things that you've given. So the smoking and the sugar and the alcohol and other drugs. There's a lot of things that go there, and not always recreational drugs. Drugs like neosynephrine, remember that one? It was a nasal spray, and then people realized that if they stopped using it, their sinuses would all just clog up immediately, because their body naturally makes that chemical. But if you spray that chemical in your nose, then the body stops making it and says, well, we don't make that anymore. We got another supply. And then when you stop using that particular medicine, well, there your body doesn't have any of its own. And now you've become addicted. Your body's become addicted. So it's not just psychotropic. There's lots of addictions. And we have a lot of food addictions, not only sugar, which is a sadistic substance, but carbohydrates and snacks and other things are addictive to where we just desire them. We want them, and we generally take what we want. That's the way we are. Now, what can we do about that? Well, most addictions, of course, come with withdrawals. That's kind of the nature of addiction, that there are withdrawals. If you decide, well, I don't want to be an addict. I don't want to do this just because it's there, because I'm addicted to it. That's kind of being a slave to it. I want to be free. I want to do it only if I choose, not because I have to. And if you have that thought, then that's a good thought to have. And if you really feel at a deep level, at a being level, that you just don't want to do that anymore, you will find that the withdrawals are almost nothing. The reason people have such long and tedious and kind of wrenching withdrawals that are so hard to get over is because they're not truly completely committed to the not using the substance anymore. There's some part of them that still wants that still needs that still, is connected. And that's why the withdrawals are so difficult. So you have a physical withdrawal, but then emotionally and mentally and spiritually, if you're not really convinced that this is what you want to do, you're just doing it because everybody's been nagging you to give up smoking. So, all right, I'm going to give up smoking because it's kind of a nasty habit, but you don't really want to give it up. You haven't come to that decision on your own. You're doing it because other people kind of nagged you into it. Then you're going to have terrible withdrawals. But when you get to the point that you say, I'm done with this, I just don't want to do this anymore, the withdrawals will be very minor and they won't last very long. So that's one issue. So sometimes withdrawals are terrible and sometimes they're not, and it mostly has to do with the attitude of the individual, not so much with the drug. The body tends to get over its withdrawals more easily than the mind. Yes. The mind tends to be the slower of the two. It just takes willpower. It takes a desire to see the problem and want to not engage in it anymore. And that takes conviction. You have to really feel that way.
Absolutely. Thank you for just sharing that with us as well. I know it's not the normal kind of question, but it's I think it's important because it's part of some of the core issues that people out there have, as well as myself as well. So yes, very, very interesting, and just very, very. Look, we need another interview with yourself. We really do. I'd like to get you back on again, most definitely, because I think we've just scratched the surface of your work. I'd like to get you back on as well, just to to actually get into consciousness a bit more and touch upon that. But just very finally as well, and this is going to have to be brief, and we'll get more into this in the next interview. In dreams as well, do you think, or in your opinion, do you find that dreams are a way of getting to experience a situation without it actually having to have the physical experience in this reality?
Yes, absolutely. The dream reality is just another virtual reality. This reality we live in, that when we call our physical universe, is a virtual reality. The out-of-body reality is a virtual reality. The transition reality that you end up in when you die in this physical virtual reality is another virtual reality. And the dream reality is a virtual reality. And all of these realities, you have choices to make. All of them. When you're in a dream, you have choices to make. And you grow up or don't grow based on those choices. It's just another place to work, if you will. It's another place to learn and to make choices. Now, one of the neat things about the dream reality is that you don't game the system. Your intellect really isn't in charge. All your choices in the dream reality are right out of your being level. They are you. They reflect your core. So it's not until you become lucid in a dream, and then it's a lucid dream, that now your intellect gets back in the driver's seat. But until you become lucid in a dream, your being level is the source of your choices. So if you have a dream and afterwards you say, oh, I can't believe I did that, or I made that choice, or that's the way I acted, well, it was just a dream. Well, you acted that way because that is you at the core. Dreams are all, you're very honest and straightforward of being exactly who you are in your dreams. So all of these realities are I call them reality frames. They're all virtual reality frames, and they're all places where we can make choices and grow from those choices. And yes, that's what we're doing there. We're doing there the same thing we're doing here, except there we can do it in a much more dramatic and big way because you don't have all the consequences afterwards. You know, you wake up and the dream's gone. There are no lasting consequences. Here, if you are, you know, in a building that's burning down, and your choice is, do I run upstairs and warn the other people, or do I just get out?
That's right.
You see? Now, there's lots of consequences. There's lots of consequences to you and to everybody else, and to, you know, maybe your next 10 or 20 years, there'll be consequences from those decisions. Well, when you have that in a dream, you still make the choice from the being level. It's still the same thing, because in the dream, it's real. You are there. The building is burning, and all those things are exactly the same, except that high drama doesn't have the impact over the rest of your life, you see. So the dream reality is really a neat place where you can do things that otherwise you wouldn't have to want to deal with here because of all the consequences that would be. But you get to deal with them there and see how you react. What is your choice? Is it fear-based or is it love-based? And then you'll grow up, you'll evolve or de-evolve the quality of your consciousness based on that. So all these realities offer the same thing to us. It's just another reality frame in which to experience and make choices. And the dream frame's great because there's choices there you'll get to make that hopefully you would never make in this physical reality, because it's too it's tied up to too many consequences.
Yeah, and it's some. I mean, I've had lucid dreams not too long ago where I got to see a potential future that was on offer to me, and I got to actually feel what it would be like to have that potential future. I actually got to feel the experience of what it, and it was an amazing feeling. And it told me in the dream, it said, "This is what life purpose feels like. Doesn't it feel good? And this is what you could have." Now that happened to me. I mean, you know, was it just something my mind? I think there was meaning in that dream, most definitely. I'm not gonna say
yes. Yes, most all of your dream realities have meaning and significance to them. And what you did there was just took a little tour of the future probable database, and it was a guided tour because you had somebody else that's kind of explaining to you what was going on.
I never got to see them. It was an invisible voice, but yes.
Right.
Yes.
That is, a lot of our dreams are lessons. They're little vignettes for us to react to or to, make choices in, or they're things like you just described, lessons, things that we learn, experiences that we have.
Beautiful.
And if you do out of body, you'll find that a lot of the out of bodies are like that too.
Yes.
It's a learning place. It's a place where you can get information like you just described, or you learn things, you have experiences that help you grow up, help you see a bigger picture. And that is their value.
Oh yeah, I mean there was this. I always remember this one dream recently where I was with this lady, and it was the most. I knew her, but I didn't know her. Do you know what I mean? And it was just the most beautiful person to be in the presence of. I was just totally in love with her, but I didn't know who she was, and I woke up and I was like, well, who the hell was she? But I knew her, but I don't know her, but I knew her, but it was. I don't know. And these, it's almost like premonitions, or it's almost like,
Right.
you can't quite put your finger on why you've had those particular dreams,
Right.
but there's some deeper meaning.
For that dream, you were given an experience of what that love is like.
Oh, it was
You
amazing.
have an experience of that's love. That's the way love is. You see, it wasn't about what you were getting. It was just
No.
a state of your being. It was
it's just so amazing.
totally involved and enveloped in this feeling. And it wasn't all about, well, what am I going to get from her?
No,
It was just, you see, it was much bigger than that. So you get that feeling, and it does two things for you. One, now you know what it's like. But two, now you know what to focus your intent on, because you have experience. You've got a data point. So you can now use that experience to say, this is the experience I'm looking for. This is the experience I would like to have. This is, that's where I would like to go. And you can't do that if you don't have an experience. You see, if you don't have any experience, then there's no way for you to put into concept or into words or into feelings where you'd like to go, where what you want to experience.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a target, if you will. It gives you something now in your experience base that you are, that you see the value of it, and you can compare the things you have with that experience you have and see what's the difference.
Well,
and the difference is likely to be the difference that you bring to it, not the difference that
yes,
the other
that's
person
so
brings
true.
to it.
Yes, yeah. And I don't think from that, having that experience, I mean, if anyone else has had this, then please do share in the comments below. But I don't think then I've ever had a relationship that was properly in love like that. And I have to say, if you are out there, I'm gonna find you. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've barely touched on dreams. That I know we've just run out of time here. What would you say then is a really important message to the audience?
The most important thing I think that members of your audience can do is, if they realize or come to exactly how they do this, of course, would be different for each one of them, but come to the conclusion that the struggle that they are having is to a very large extent created by themselves. Most of us tend to blame everything that doesn't work well on somebody else, all the things that don't feel good on somebody else. That person makes me angry. We never think, I choose to be angry when that person does what they do. We don't take responsibility for our feelings. We don't take responsibility for our actions. Oh, that person made me do such and such. Well, first, take responsibility. It's your life. You're responsible for every bit of it. If you're unhappy, take responsibility for that. If you're frustrated, take responsibility for that. You can change it. Most all of the things going on in your life, if they're not peace and joy and happiness and satisfaction, they are your own creation. And once you get to that point, then you feel like, well, then if I'm creating that, then I can change it. And that's a very empowering viewpoint. Yes, you can change it. And how do you change it? You get rid of the fear. How do you get rid of fear? Most of us have dozens of fears that we don't even know we have. We have no idea how much fear motivates us, how much everything we do, the thoughts we think, the feelings we have are based in our fear. It surprises people when they realize how much fear they have. Well, how do you find fear? First, look at ego. Ego's easy to find. Fears are hard. But the ego, is it about you? Is it about you? What you want, what you need, the way you think people should be, the way you think your boss should act, the way, you getting what you deserve and others being and doing and acting and feeling the way that you want them to feel. That's all about you. If it's all about you, that's ego. And when you find that ego, trace it back to the fear. There is a fear out of which that ego is operating. It's the fear that creates that ego. And it's the same with beliefs. Beliefs are also difficult to find, where we believe all sorts of things and we don't even know it. But work with the ego. If it's about you, if you're concerned about you, if you're afraid about you getting yours and not being abused and so on, if it's your fear, then find the root of that fear. Take that ego back. Why am I afraid? Well, I'm afraid that people won't like me or they won't treat me well and I won't get what I deserve and so on. Then that's your fear. Your fear is maybe of being inadequate. Your fear is not getting what you want. Well, get rid of the fear. Learn to accept what you get. Learn to learn and grow from everything that you get, no matter what it is. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, learn from it. Grow up from it. And then you will eventually be able to get rid of those fears. And once you get rid of the first fear, that's the tough one. Everything else after that is a lot easier. And as those fears come away and that ego reduces and those beliefs begin to disappear, you will feel lighter and stronger and more empowered. And suddenly you won't need to control things. Things will just happen. Your life will become peace and joy and satisfaction, and it just snowballs. So if you're not a happy camper, if you do have a lot of struggle, if you've got things that just don't seem to want to resolve themselves, first realize that you are responsible for that. You are most likely creating that. About a 99% chance that you're the one creating that. Yes, we blame it on everybody else, but that's not the case. We take responsibility for it, and then we need to change it, and that means we need to find the fear, and we need to get rid of it. Now, all those things are really easy to say, but they're not real easy to do. They're going to take a lot of stick-to-itiveness. You have to work on it, and getting rid of your first fear may take you a year or two. It's not quick. It's just like people who are addicted. They think they want to get rid of something, but they're not really entirely committed to it, so they never quite do get rid of it. Well, it's like that. If you're not really committed to it, it'll be even harder to do, and it takes courage. The only antidote to fear is courage, because when it's a fear, and if you get rid of it, you're going to feel vulnerable. You're going to feel very vulnerable when you get rid of that fear, because it's that fear is often there, you think, protecting you, and you don't realize that in that protection it actually damages you. It's worse than the vulnerability. Learn to be vulnerable and accept whatever comes and deal with it, and you'll just feel better. Your life will turn around and everything will start working for you. And the second fear is much easier than the first. So that's what I would leave with people. Take responsibility, change yourself, get rid of the fear, get rid of the beliefs, and your life will be wonderful. And it'll stay wonderful. There's no way to knock a person off, that high, if they interpret everything that comes to them as an opportunity, as a great opportunity to grow up. You say, okay, something tough happens. It's an opportunity to grow up. You have to realize you don't control everything. You can't control everything. And then eventually you realize that it would be horrible if you could control everything. It's much better just to control nothing, deal with what comes. Now, that doesn't mean, again, be stupid. It's not like, well, I'm just going to go with the flow and who cares about who pays my mortgage? That's not going to work. You can't be stupid about it. You have to deal with all your responsibilities in all areas. But you can make your life much more pleasant than it is if you find those fears and get rid of them. So that's the big one. That's the big takeaway on kind of the conversation that we've been having.
Yeah.
Don't point that finger at anybody else. Go find a mirror, look at it, and then point the finger at the guy, pointing their finger at you.
That's right. And I think as well as give into the situation, just flow with it, and don't fight it neither.
Right. Learn from it.
Yeah, learn from it as well. Well, and also, I know I've not mentioned your books have been coming up on the screen throughout this interview, and I feel quite guilty that I'm not mentioned the My Big Toe trilogy, but they have been coming up on the screen. Your website, just for the audience that's listening to this via a podcast.
Yeah, it's www.mybigtoe.com. And if you want to know where I'm going to be giving talks or other things, it's www.mbt, which is My Big Toe, of course, mbtevents.com.
Okay.
So go to those places. And on YouTube, I've got somewhere between 300 and 400 videos of talks given, interviews given, workshops. Everything I do, I record and put out on YouTube for free. So it's all out there. And if reading the books is troublesome, then the videos will help. And if you don't want to buy books, you can get them for free on Google Books.
Okay, wonderful. Well, those two websites have been coming on the screen periodically, along with your books as well. I just want to say, Tom, just thank you so much for coming on today, and I really, really appreciate the time that you've given us. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I feel the same way you do. If there's something I can do that's helpful to others, then I want to do it, and it's fun.
Well, you definitely have been. So, Tom Campbell, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you soon.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.com, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.